Hey, did you know that IKEA now makes double-walled coffee glass mugs? Yes, they do. Not bad. Actually, pretty darn good. Keeps the temperature, keeps it from sweating up. Also, when you have a cold drink in it. Anyway, hey, how'd you like that new intro? Huh? Pretty splashy and spiffy, isn't it? Drop a comment below. Curious to hear what you guys think of it. Today, very special show. Very, very special. We're on with one of the greatest, one of the most amazing connoisseurs, librarians, knowledge masters of classical music that I possibly know of. The great Mark Ward. If you haven't already, you can subscribe to him on his YouTube channel, of course. I'll drop a link below. He also writes for The Tracking Angle, and you can read his incredible essays about classical music, film scores, all kinds of cool stuff, including, of course, the great interviews with the DG team and all of the reissues that they're doing now with the 70s stuff, 4 tracks and some 8 tracks in the last case. Anyway, yeah, so that is going to be Mark Ward. I hope you guys enjoy the show. Also, really quick, we just launched our merchandising store for Sonic Flair. Take a look up here. If there's anything that grabs your attention, feel free to make a purchase and show your support like you mean it. Or don't. Tell me to buzz off if you want. Either way, this is not a money-making thing. In fact, I'm by the time all is said and done, I'll probably just about break even on this. We do also have Sonic Flair coffee for those coffee connoisseurs, which I know there's quite a few of you on the channel that watch it. And so this is not some willy-nilly Folgers $1.50 coffee that you get at the grocery store. This is Erlesener Kaffee that has been tested and procured on behalf of Sonic Flair. And it's pretty damn good, if I may say so myself. So, without further ado, hey, check it out. Let's get the show on the road with Mark Ward. Thanks for tuning in. As always, I love reading you guys' comments. Drop below and don't forget to like and subscribe, like you mean it. Thank you. Ciao. Okay, so we're recording, and are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. I've only got water.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, live with Sonic Flair and the great Mark Ward, music on record. If you
What
haven't,
a great introduction.
well, you know, you deserve it. You really do. Let me tell you something, folks. If you haven't subscribed to his YouTube channel, or if you're not familiar with his epic monologues at trackingangle.com, Michael Fremer's site, you're missing out. You simply have to subscribe to his videos, and you have to start reading his editorial at Tracking Angle, because truly, and I'm not blowing smoke up anyone's butt here, I'm just telling you straight up like it is, I do not know of anyone who encapsulates classical music the way Mark does. Mark,
thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Oh, God, I'm so thrilled to be here. I've been a fan of yours, Danny, since you first broke onto the airwaves.
Thank you.
And we've been trying to do this forever. And yes, I'm just thrilled that we're finally doing it. East Coast, West Coast. I'm in LA, you're in Maine.
That's true. Yes. Yeah. Me too. Me too. It's truly a pleasure to meet you, Mark, in person, or I guess as close as this is in person.
And our viewers should know we've already been gabbing for like nearly 2 hours.
Yes,
all the really good stuff. So now we're going to get serious. We're gonna do classical music.
Yes, exactly.
No. This is going to be really fun.
I love it. As you can tell, Mark and I are very shy personalities.
Oh, shy and retiring.
Yes, we're taking twisters to pull words out of our mouths. It's very challenging to get either one of us to talk. So bear with us as we go through this painful hour of extracting information from one another.
You are all going to suffer. We're going to suffer. You're going to suffer.
I love it. Brilliant. So, Mark,
yes.
You know, in your email exchange, you started off with, you know, how did we get into this whole mess that we find ourselves in called music and this hobby that we're in?
Well, this is a question I want to ask you as well, but I know how I got into it.
Yes.
Shall I tell you quickly?
Please.
I mean, our listeners are just dying to know. Okay, very traditional. Obviously, English at school. Back in those days, we did music in school, and everyone had to sing in the choir. Everyone had to learn to play the recorder. Everyone to learn to play music.
Yep.
And I was into it. And alongside with that, I was already into classical music because my dad had one of those old little portable record players, and he had a very limited collection of records. But one of them I zeroed in on right away, which was Holst Planets, older recording by Adrian Bold. He did like 20 recordings, but this is an older one. And apparently when I was about 4, I used to dance around the room telling everyone what the story of the music was. So when the opportunity came to start learning music and doing it, I was just into it. And my parents were mystified. My mother was genuinely tone deaf. When she was at boarding school, you know, again in England, everyone had to sing. But she was taken aside by her house mistress and told, Jane, please don't sing in chapel. Shut up. You're putting everyone off. She really could not hold a tune. So that was her. Yep. And then my father, you know, he liked music, and he'd actually sung in a choir in his school when he was like 9, 10, 11, boarding school. So maybe a little bit but there was but I was just into it. And I was lucky to be in a school where the principal's son was a professional musician.
Yeah.
So I started playing the piano, started playing the cello. My cello teacher was in, at that point, the orchestra at the Royal Opera House. So he would get me free tickets. So I went to all this amazing opera and then concerts and stuff. And then I did music seriously all the way through. So I did piano, cello. But I was fascinated by early music. And so I kept on doing recorders, and I started to do that seriously with a member of someone who worked with the Dolmetsch family, pioneers in historically informed period instruments, all of that. Then I started playing viola da gamba, other stuff. University, I did music. I did everything. I had my own choir for a while. I conducted. I did composition. And then by the end of university, I was completely turned off by classical music.
Yeah.
And I should add here that throughout high school, I ran the record club.
Wow.
So I was into records from a very, very early age.
Yeah.
And the first big thing I was gifted by my parents for my 10th birthday, the Karajan complete set of Beethoven symphonies.
Yeah.
And I was just always into records, and running the school thing was great. And I just have to quickly tell this wonderful story. So one of my teachers in music history was a guy called Alistair Sampson, who was the organist at our school. And we had these spectacular, our school was founded by King Henry VI. And I sang in the choir, and our sister colleges were Winchester and King's. And I sang in the choir, and every 2 years we would do a combined evensong in one of the 3 chapels. And when I was 13, when I first started at my school, we went and sang in King's College, Cambridge, under the great David Wilcox. It was his last term, 3 choirs. And it was just one of the greatest experiences of my life. And I would say that actually singing in choirs, and I did that seriously all the way through. You do everything. You sing everything. That's how I first discovered Bruckner. Yeah. And singing the motets, which are exquisite and very difficult. You've got to get the tuning dead on. We even made a record when I was about 17, and we were under the flight path of Heathrow, so we had to record it around midnight. That was amazing. So to be exposed to all that music, and then, like I said, completely turned off classical music.
Yeah.
And then after university, I got involved. I was a teacher and I was writing and doing all kinds of stuff. That's when the writing really started in earnest. And then, kind of very long story short, I worked in pop music a little bit. I was writing pop songs and stuff like that. And I got a job in America at NPR. And the job was tailor-made for me. It was one of those things. I wrote a letter in and they said, come in for an interview tomorrow. And I was producing music for NPR. And wow. We were recording everything in Boston, all the classical music people. They wanted someone who had some knowledge of sound, some knowledge of studios, some knowledge of, and detailed knowledge of classical music, and could write. So it was perfect. And then I started doing radio drama, and I worked off and on and all that for many, many years, and many others, lots of other stuff too, but always writing, wrote for newspapers and stuff like this. And then fast forward to the present. Wow. So my daughter basically was haranguing me in the end of COVID to say, Dad, you've got to start a video channel. People are doing these video channels about records. I said, what? You know. And I discovered, these names will be familiar. I discovered Norman Maslow. And then I saw one of his four corners. And there was this young guy, Michael Johnson, Poetry on Plastic. And I thought, hell, this guy really knows his stuff. Yeah. Because I'd never been an audiophile until like the 90s. And I had happened upon Stereophile and realized that there was this whole, like, records? What? Reading Michael Framer. Yeah. And I picked up a used Rager 3. And I went, oh my God, all these records, which I had almost sold in graduate school, almost sold them. And I couldn't do it. And because I've been collecting since I was 10. Wow. English pressings. Yeah. And she said, don't do it. Don't do it. We were both in graduate school. I'm so glad I didn't. And you know who I almost sold it to was that guy in LA called the Record Collector. No! Almost. He came round and was offering me practically nothing. And a few years later, I went to his shop and I saw what he would have sold my records for. Had all these English pressings, Decca and EMIs. So
I'm glad you didn't. I'm glad you didn't.
I'm so glad. That was my wife. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth. So anyway, so I saw Norman's thing and saw Michael Johnson. I thought, God, you could really
do this.
I could do this. And Parche, your lovely words of introduction, people should also read Michael Johnson and check out his channel, Poetry on Plastic. He's fabulous. And he's 100%. Very, very knowledgeable. And he's much more knowledgeable about the technological side of it than I am. And so I started doing the channel. And then out of nowhere, I got this email from Framer, who I'd been reading since the 90s. Wow. He was the one who got me back into vinyl, as so many have this story. Yep. I've been reading him forever. And he said, I'm starting a new channel and a new website, Tracking Angle, which I knew about. I knew he was about to launch it or had just launched it. Yeah. And he said, I'm looking for writers. Would you like to come and write for me? And I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a
who is this?
I thought it was AI. And and it turned out that one of my viewers was the business guy behind the new channel. Venture. And I also had been writing a blog off and on for years. And he checked out my writing and he'd been pestering Framer to hire me. Wow. And then so I got in touch with Framer and I said, just one question. can I get into the weeds? Can I write this way? I'd really like to write this if necessary, get into it.
Yeah.
And he said, oh no, I welcome that. I want that. And this is a really rare thing to hear these days. It certainly in cultural commentary writing, art sections of newspapers, come on.
100%.
And even online. And that's the rest is history. And I love writing for it. It's great. And I wish I had more time to do my channel, but there we go. And then it was through YouTube that I discovered you. And I think I discovered you on someone else's channel. It was maybe on Norman's or on 45 RPM. And then you started your own channel, and I've been a fan ever since.
Oh, thank you. Very
kind of So this guy is great. So, but we've been meaning to connect forever.
Yes.
So I hope that was not too long.
Not at all.
An explanation of my life in 13 minutes.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Look, at the end of the day, I think we're in a day and age where people care about experiences, people care about stories, and there's stories that need to be told. And I personally, whenever I find or meet someone who's so experienced and knowledgeable, I've learned so much just from reading the articles that you've written for Tracking and watching your videos. It's incredible. I feel like I'm such a novice. No, seriously. To touch on some of your points, so when I was a child growing up in Vienna, in Austria.
Yes, I wanted to hear how you got into all of this.
Similar to you, right? I mean, part of it was I have an older brother, 10 years older than me. He was building his own amps, his own speakers, listening to records, the old story, right? And so at the ripe age of, I think, 8 or 9, he introduced me to things like Michael Jackson and Thriller, or not Thriller, but Off the Wall.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, wow, this sounds amazing. Wow. I'm this 7-year-old little turd, listening to Michael Jackson Off the Wall. And went to a private boarding school like yourself. In my case, it was a Jesuit school. Music was very much part of the curriculum. To your point, we had music 5 days a week.
And let's just make this point right here. One of the tragedies in modern society is how they've cut art and music from the curriculum. And here's why. It's more than just, developing a taste for the music. Being involved in music, being involved in art, it socializes children. It teaches them to collaborate. It teaches them how to take responsibility for their work, but be part of a group. I mean, I always say to anyone, if your kid can sing, get them in a choir. It's the most amazing. You don't have to have a high level of skill, and you're going to get all the benefits of it. And one of the reasons why we see so many problems in society, I really believe this, is because people don't do these things in school. It's like the worst thing to cut. Cut a bit of maths, cut a bit of the other stuff. This stuff is important.
Mark, I couldn't agree with you more. Sincerely, I could not agree with you more. It pains me to no end with what education has brought in the United States, and the downside and the downgrade of the dumbing down, as I call it, of our society. It really starts with music.
Music and art and all of that.
100%. I mean, look, people always ask me, is like, how do you know so much about music? And I have to tell you, I mean, apart from my brother's audiophilia and him building his own amps and all that is part of it. But the bigger part of it was being subjected to music 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, for 6 years in high school.
Yeah.
I mean, simple as that. And,
Did you ever? Did you play anything? Did you sing?
The flute, the
Ah,
flute.
okay.
Yes. I sucked at the piano, at all the percussion instruments. Look, I can't carry a tune to save my life. My brain is simply not wired that way.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, I want to. It's almost painful because it brings back memories of, oh my God, I can't believe I have to study this shit.
Oh yeah.
Just to give you an example, and to give the viewers an example, we had to learn to write notes.
Oh yeah.
And read notes. And look, I think it's fundamental in bringing that cohesiveness, like you said. I remember our music professor would come in, play a record, whether it's classical or whatever, and guys, you guys have to work together and write the note sheet for this piece of music I just played you. I mean, today, you present it to a 12-year-old like I was in the day, and they're like, "Oh my God, what are you talking about? Like, write notes down? Are you kidding me? I don't even know what notes are." But it fosters collaboration. It fosters, connectivity, community, and look, like I said, my brother did his thing with the hardware part, which is bringing music to life, so to speak. But I have to credit Collegium Karlsburg, which is the boarding school I went to.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah, exactly.
Another sip of wine.
Yes. And my gosh, I can't remember. I can't recall my music professor's name. But credit to him for teaching me about music. And and then the other part of that was my parents, very much being into classical music, being into part of the classical Western education, and so
also you were in Vienna.
Yes, well, that's exactly it, right? I mean, the capital of music, of classical music, Western music, right? And so I had subscriptions to the Musikverein, to the Volksoper and the Staatsoper. And then, and again, this is one of those things where you're a kid and it means nothing to you until you're at the age of realizing and recognizing it. And so our neighbor in Vienna, we lived on the outskirts of Vienna in the 18th district, Schafberg. For those of you from Vienna or whatever listening in and watching, my neighbor was Art Farmer. And, Art was married to a Viennese lady, Mechtil. Yep. And his son, Georg, George and I were BFFs from the age of 9 when we moved into that part of town, up until 13 when I went to boarding school, 12 or 13, so about 3 years. And then we would see each other on weekends. We would go to Art's studio downstairs in his house, and he would be, practicing his flugelhorn. And, I was like, oh my God, this is what, jazz? Okay, this is jazz. This sounds like classical music, number one. Okay, this is kind of cool. This is interesting. George, unlike his dad's wishes, really was a percussionist. And so he went into drums. He loved the big instruments, the cello, the bass. And, I would listen to Art Farmer rehearse, play music for us. Benny Golson was his best friend, one of his best friends.
Wow.
We would listen to jazz.
That's amazing.
And
not many people could say that they had an experience like this. This is amazing.
I feel incredibly blessed. I really do. and it really, I think, intuitively set me up to appreciate music at a different level from your average person growing up, right?
Right.
And I think that's what brings it back to your comment earlier, which is it's such a shame that music and arts have been cut out of the curriculum.
But I will say, and I will say this fervently, you don't need any of that to enjoy the classical music.
100%.
Any music, you need none of it. You don't need to read music. You don't none
Yes.
of it.
Very
It
true.
just it's and I think one of the great things about this Deutsche Grammophon original source series is I think it's really awoken a new generation of people
Yes.
to classical music in a very exciting way. It's one of the sort of things that I don't think people quite expected, but I think it really has happened.
Yes.
As in that video we recorded with the folks at EBS, etc., Framer said that, he gets some of the highest traffic on the site from people reading all our stuff about original source. So it's wonderful. Before we move on, there is one very important. There we go. Yeah, I assume you've got all of them. Have you got all of them, Danny?
I have maybe 80%.
Okay. You've got the Bruckner.
Yes, of course.
I want to ask you about
when it comes to the big ones, like the Bruckner, like the Carillon, et cetera, I have to get them. I just have to get it. Especially the greats.
And the Bruckner set is I kept, as I was writing my pieces, I was like, am I overdoing this? Am I over, because it really is extraordinary on so many levels, musically, technologically. But before we get into that, there is one very important question I have to ask you relating to Vienna.
I didn't study. Wait a minute.
Where's the best place to get strudel and Schlagsahn?
Oh, there's only one place.
I have dreams of strudel and Schlagsahn, which is whipped cream. And I remember when I saw Inglourious Bastards, the scene where the villain is eating the thing, I was just like, oh my God, this is just torture. But so where is the place?
There's only one place. Look, at the end of the day, there's many places, obviously.
Of course, but still.
If you truly want to experience strudel with Schlagobers and a kleinen braunen coffee with it, as you would traditionally.
Yes, that's
the only place that if you're a first-time Vienna visitor and a first-time authentic Viennese strudel appreciator, you have to go to Damer Cafe.
Okay.
Cafe Damer.
I feel like I've heard of that. Is it a famous place?
It is. It's Damer. The Damer family was the official purveyor and supplier of strudel and all kinds of pastries to the Count K monarchy Austria first, and then obviously Austro-Hungary. Later on. And so, yes, it's
boy, that must be so good.
It truly is an experience. I mean, it's a coffee house, okay. So here we are in America, and it is bafflingly shocking that we cannot have a coffee house like Damer in America anywhere.
Nowhere.
It doesn't connect.
You have to start it. You have to start it.
Yes.
But they wouldn't give you. They won't give you the recipes. But it's like people say. So here you go and get a high tea, but you can't get the proper clotted cream, which kind of defeats the purpose because it has to be pasteurized in this country. Yeah. So I just say go to Fortnum's or Brown's Hotel, and then you'll get the real thing, but there's really are the places.
Yes.
But Now I know where to go in Vienna, because Vienna is somewhere I
Café
still want to go.
Dame am Graben, downtown Vienna. It's one of the oldest coffee houses, and it's truly an experience. I mean, when you walk in, it's just an experience. It's just an experience. I mean, I can't. There's no two ways of telling you about it. In fact, I brought some American friends. This was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. They were visiting Vienna, and I happened to be visiting Vienna at the same time. And so they're like, "Oh my God, you're going to be our guide." And of course, I obliged. And so for 3 glorious days, I brought them to all of my fond memories of growing up in Vienna.
Fabulous.
And eating cake at Daimler and having coffee and Wiener Schnitzel and all the rest of the stuff.
Oh my God! I'm sort of collapsing in a heap here. It's just like my stomach is just going. When are we getting on a plane?
Yes, I know we need to. Look, if money were no object, if I had unlimited funds, you and I would be on a trip to Vienna with our ladies.
I'm holding you
tomorrow
to
in my jet. And
my wife has spent. Yeah, she's been to the opera there. She lived in her family's father, English, mother Hungarian, and she lived in Zurich for 4 years, working in a lab there. So she would go to all these places. And she loved Vienna, and she went to the opera. I wanted to ask you, are there any particular operas or classical concerts that stick in your memory since you went? Yeah, putting you on the spot.
So here's the funny thing, Mark. So, and this is truly from the heart. My friends were all riding their BMX bikes.
Oh God. I know where this is going.
To watch, whatever it is was on ET and whatever else wasn't in the cinemas. And I had to go to the freaking Volksoper, sit through a freaking concert.
Yeah.
Or an opera.
I hear you.
Or a play or something. It was
fucking Austrian.
Nuts. Dressed up, right?
Yeah.
It was painful.
Yeah,
it was painful. I hated it, but somehow or another, I managed to retain an emotional connection to classical music, even though I hated it at the time. I mean, here I am, 13 years old, 14 years old. I want to be out with my friends. I want to go chase girls. I want to go, the drinking age in Austria for beer and wine is 16 years.
Yep, like it is in
and it's not like anyone carries ID. So if you're 15 or 14 and you look like you're 16, no one is going to ask you.
We had a private pub in my school. I had friends in my house who were alcoholics by the time they were 18.
Shockingly.
I mean, serious alcoholics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I have so many stories.
Exactly. So I mean, that's what a 14, 15, 16-year-old wants to do, right? Not go to the Staatsoper, not go to the Musikverein and listen to Bruckner or, Mahler or Brahms or anyone else, right?
Yeah.
So anyway.
I was a very strange child, so I did like going to those concerts. But then when I finished university, I literally did not listen to a note of classical music for a couple of years. I was so turned off by it, turned off by that intense academic thing. Yeah. Just hated it. Okay, so should we talk a little bit about? Are you gonna? I would just very quickly love to hear your impressions of the Bruckner set. If people know what we're talking about, the Herbert von Karajan original source mega box, I don't have it here to hand. But any impressions, Danny?
First of all, I gotta be honest. I have to give the DG guys incredible amounts of credit for resurrecting I think one of the most important fundamental components to classical music, which is Deutsche Grammophon,
Oh my
particularly
God. Yeah.
the 70s era, where I think so much important work was recorded and archived for future generations that will never be done again, obviously.
No.
And so what they've been able to do, extract those 4-track, and in the Bruckner case, 8-track and digital.
Unbelievable what they've done.
It's truly amazing. I recall that, I think, what was it, a couple of months ago, because you got your box set before me. The first thing I asked you, I think, was how are the first 3 symphonies, because they're digitally recorded.
Yeah.
And they were later released after.
Unlistenable. My copies. I listened to them once and that was it.
Disgusting. I mean, I hate to say it, but
they were.
Seriously, it's like everything wrong with digital. But then you pull up these records and it's like, oh my God, what happened?
Isn't it incredible?
What did they do? What filters did they apply? What magic sorcery did they pull out of their hat to make this happen? So
I do I mean, Rainer is a visionary.
Yes.
And I mean, we're going to do an extended interview with him on Tracking Angle at some point.
Awesome.
But he is a visionary. And, I mean, as I mentioned in my article, not only did they have their own bespoke digital stuff they did to clean it up in the digital realm, because he's got a guy at EBS Studios who's brilliant in this. But then he had this brilliant idea of resurrecting the console, the mixing console that was used for Karajan's 63 cycle. And he put everything through that. And that was the thing. And in our video, they tell the story about how he called up Johannes. And we should give Johannes huge props for, I can only imagine how he had to sell this to the higher ups at DG or Universal or whatever it is, whatever corporations. And Rainer called him up and said, "I've done it. I figured it out." But yeah, I mean and that is kind of the quiet story of this set.
Yeah,
is how those 3 recordings are more than listenable now.
Resurrected.
Yeah,
completely resurrected.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
No, I mean, and you sort of touched on this. I mean, the thing about this whole series is, who knew that these DG records sounded, the tapes were this good? No one knew it because, I mean, we all collected our early, large tulip pressings, which were somewhere sort of approaching Deckers and EMIs and not really approaching RCAs and Mercuries, but sort of in the ballpark. But 70s, forget it. And then it was like, this was on the tapes.
It's a miracle.
Oh, that's my cat meowing. Yes, Misty. She'll go away, hopefully.
Look, I can unequivocally say that every single, I have about 80% of the reissues that came out, and I can unequivocally say that every single one of them sounds dramatically better than the original.
It's on another level.
I have, right?
I mean, what's extraordinary was to learn that DJs. Misty, yes, you're just going to have to do without for the moment. She's very loud. She'll go away. She's a cranky 22-year-old at this point. 22, it was my daughter's cat.
It's like 150 years in human years.
What was I've completely lost my train of thought now.
The DG sound and the 4-track tapes and
really just that none of us had any idea.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just such a revelation. And incidentally, quite a few of them are still available. If you go onto the don't always look on the DG German site, but look on Center Stage US, which is the outlet for the American and there are some of the records which from earlier batches which are still available, and you can get them there.
Yeah. No, it's truly remarkable. I mean, the ambience, the hall sound. Trust me, get it. You're gonna love it. You're gonna hear it for the first time if that's what you're listening to. If you have old copies, they're basically going to collect dust because there is no way.
Oh no.
That
I know what. Yes, I know what I was going to say. That we learned that they specifically they cut these records in such a way that they limited the amount of information in the grooves, just because they wanted to make sure that the records, it was the lowest common denominator. Different pressing plants around the world. Unbelievable that they did that. Anyway. Yeah. So shall we move on to? We're going to show a bunch of different records, I think.
Yes. Let's move on. I'll only say one more thing.
Oh, okay.
I am excited, and I really don't know, but I'm super excited to see what they have coming in this series, because the wealth of information that has been recorded in the 70s, I think, is truly incredible. And we're never going to get any kind of recordings like that ever again. And so I'm, hats off to the team.
And they're making money. So this is going to continue. Very excited. We know for sure now. Now I'm going to take a little credit for this. We've got the next 4 coming, all of which are great. In particular, the Pellini, I'm very, very excited about. There's a ton of his catalog they could do. I'm going to take some credit for this. We know the Karajan Mahler 6 is coming in the batch after that. Wow. And I've been getting very interesting little emails from Reiner about cow horns and extra tapes and things that they have to do. Tracking down the car. Where were the cow horns recorded?
Love
it. But anyway. The cowbells and stuff, all of that stuff, cow horns, cowbells.
That's such a beautiful symphony.
But it's
Mahler is, I think, but a brilliant.
Oh,
as troubled as his mind was, I think that's what led him to write the most incredible pieces of classical music ever written.
Each symphony is a world into itself.
Yes,
and the 6, that Karajan recording, I think, is far and away the best. Even if you pick up a regular pressing, it actually sounds really pretty good for some reason.
Yeah,
I can only imagine how it's going to be, and I've been pestering them about this one. I also think the studio 9th and obviously the live 9th are 2 other great Karajan records. I know what the other 3 titles are in that next batch, and one of them is one that I can't say. But I did go on the Hoffman forums and tantalize everyone. But one of them is one that would absolutely have been on my list. It's a 4-track. They're all 4 tracks. The other 2 are great. But the sky is the limit. And, they have told me, send me your suggestions. The only thing that stops them from doing something is if they feel the musical and technical level is a little bit low. I know a lot of people have been saying, are they going to do the Kleiber Beethoven 5th? And the fact that they did the 7th first makes me think that maybe there's a problem on the 5th. I'll have to ask Reiner about it, because that would be, it's one of the classics. But you can pick up the Speaker's Corner version, which sounds very, very nice indeed. So there we go. So there's lots to look forward to.
Love it. Can't wait. I hope they do some Argerich.
Yeah, for sure. There's a beautiful Bach record she did in the 70s.
Terrific.
Yeah, there's so much Pellini. Me being me, I would love to see his late Beethoven piano sonatas, the Bartók piano concertos, the Beethoven piano concertos with Böhm, more Chopin.
Yes.
Schoenberg piano music, please. Oh, and there is one album. There's one album which is like, well, there's several which are top of my list.
Yes.
But this.
Hang on. Wait.
Do you know this?
Hang on. Wait a minute. Let me.
No,
darn,
you did it the wrong
me.
way. It's okay.
This.
I'll do it. Just go back. Just go back to the other way. There we go.
There we go.
This is Karajan's groundbreaking release of music of the Second Viennese School, came out in the mid-70s, and Deutsche Grammophon wouldn't fund it. He funded it with his own money, largely funded it, and it's all the key works. Now, this was recorded not in the Philharmonie, in the Jesus Christus Kirche, but this really changed people's minds about the Second Viennese School, which is kind of the end of Romanticism, beginning of 20th century music.
Yep.
And this was a huge bestseller. The statistic was that if you piled all the copies on top of each other, it would reach the top of the Eiffel Tower.
Wow.
So that's one of my absolute top requests for Karajan. Other requests would be the Honegger symphonies that he did,
of course,
which is amazing. Yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, there's no doubt there's no shortage of titles.
No. And more chamber and instrumental music. And I think they're on board with that. You know, I love, you know, the Schubert Trout Quintet they did.
Oh, yes. Oh, beautiful.
It was lovely.
Beautiful. Yes.
So there we go.
But,
hang
on a second. Wait a minute. We're going to switch tempos completely. Completely switch tempos.
Oh, good. So, I'm going to take some responsibility for this next one.
Yes, you sure will. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is...
got them.
Yes, Phase 4, the London decas of various thrillers, James Bond movies, that whole genre set of the 60s and 70s that just encapsulates that period and the aesthetic of that period. And the Phase 4 sound is sublime. It's utterly unbelievable.
You got some more. Oh, great.
I have a bunch more that are downstairs. I've got about 7 of them.
Oh, you read my article? Because I think I got a text from you saying,
Mark, it was unbelievable. I mean, look, I knew many of these, and I was like, wait a minute. Mark wrote an article, hold your horses, time out, dogs, go see your mom. I'm reading for the next hour Mark's article. It was enlightening. It was invigorating. It was absolutely astounding to learn what went on behind the scenes. Like I said, these are just 2 of the titles that I pulled.
On those great covers.
Oh my God. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? I mean, look at this. You know, you got the Walter PPK on one or whatever that is. I think it's a Walter PPK.
Yeah, I think
so. And then you've got...
that is so politically incorrect now.
Can you imagine a record cover today like that? No way.
No way.
But, I mean, man, this is such fantastic. And it's inexpensive. It's really not. You're not going to break the bank on these.
No.
And look, the sound quality is wall to wall. It's breathtaking. It's fantastic. It's bombastic. It's exactly what this genre, I mean, to sound cliched, it's exactly what these songs and these tracks require, is to have that wide sound stage, the dynamics, the slam, the trombones, the woodwinds.
It's unreal. It's yeah. So along with my, you know, so I listen to everything. People think I'm just a classical guy, but I'm totally into everything except for hip hop. Yeah, I've tried so hard. But you know, I listen to everything, but I have a guilty secret, which is I have a thing for easy listening records of the 60s
Yes.
and 70s. I just love them. I love, because, okay, the first thing is the sound is often amazing.
Yep.
The arrangements are so cool. And I have a particular passion for the Phase 4 catalog. They also did a ton of really cool classical stuff.
Yes.
But that record you show, the Phase 4 World of Thrillers, I remember so clearly. I went into the Harrods record department when I was about 11 or 12.
You're
and
kidding.
It was sitting there.
You picked it up.
There, and I just went, I've got to have that cover. I've got to have it.
Wow.
And that set the course of my life in a certain direction. So that first, the Phase 4 World of Thrillers has selections from throughout their catalog. And I'm going to be writing more about these other records as we go along. But the ones I focused in my 2 articles, which you can find on Tracking Angle, they were from January this year, or on the Roland Shaw series of albums, where he did all the James Bonds. And these, so I am a huge John Barry fan. If you look up here,
me too.
A wonderful book up here. And I'm going to do stuff about his catalog, etc. And you wouldn't have thought you could better the originals, or even his own records. He then did records where he did his own arrangements again of the original soundtracks. But these versions give him a run for the money, and sometimes are better. You know, and then there's other stuff. So they do music from other films, and one of my favorite tracks is I Spy.
Oh, yes.
I mean that, and I talk about it in the article, but
unbelievable.
That it's so enormous. I actually there's a 40. Actually, do yourself a favor, Danny. See if you can track down the 45, because it's a 45 of just I Spy, and I think it's really on the other side, and it's even bigger. But I mean, this thing has it's just the bass guitar, the strings, the brass jabs. I mean, it's just it's enormous. It's so, and those session players are playing.
Unbelievable.
They give the Wrecking Crew and those guys a run for their money. They're so into it. They have a drummer on these the drummer and bass guitar play, and I'm going to assume this is the same guys. Those guys just are amazing players, and that drummer, he just goes crazy on all these records.
Incredible talent.
So much fun. Have you got anything else there to show us?
Oh, I mean, I've got a ton of stuff. I mean, look, the thing is, people always ask me, they're like, you know, what do you listen to the most? There is no such thing. I mean, I listen to classical, I listen to jazz, I listen to pop, I listen to classic rock, I listen to a lot of electronic music. Soundtracks are a big genre of mine that I have quite a few records of, probably about 500 or so, 600 records.
How many records do you actually own?
10,000. 10,000.
Yeah, I think I might be approaching that number, which and so many CDs, because I still listen to CDs, absolutely.
So as a matter of fact, let me pull out this one, Steeplechase. This is
what's this?
Hang on, let me see. How do I show this best? So this is the great Shirley Horn. How do I show?
Yes.
Like you see.
Shirley Horn. I don't know that one, but I got a bunch of hers. She's great.
So this is a Steeplechase reissue. Steeplechase, of course, is the great label from the mid 70s to early 80s. Recorded a bunch of famous artists, including Shirley Horn. And this particular one, so if you put up, in fact, I'm using this for my next review of the Wilson Audio Sasha V's.
Oh, okay.
Side 2, track 1, Lazy Afternoon. It is literally a trio. It's her, you've got percussion on the left channel, and you've got guitars and accompaniment on the center, or I guess it would be the center channel, but you know, obviously a stereo image. And let me tell you something. I hate the cliche of it, but I'll say it anyway. She's in the room. It's like Dream with Dean. It's, her voice is mic'd perfectly. And I mean, this is a reissue. I'm sure it's still in print. You can still get this for
I'm going to check it out. I love her. She's fantastic. She's very underrated.
Completely underrated. Unbelievable.
I mean, she's an amazing pianist.
Unbelievable.
I mean, I've got a few of her later albums. She did that wonderful album. What Miles plays on one of her later albums.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I'm a huge Miles fan. I'm going to admit it. I have all the Mosaic sets.
Do you really?
Yeah. Oh. I bought them when they came out, and they still sound amazing.
Then there's for the British fans, Ian Carr.
Yes, I've got something with him on Kaleidoscope of Rainbows. Do you know the Neil Artley?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I will tell you that my great friend Craig Crane from Analogue October Records is going to be reissuing Kaleidoscope of Rainbows.
Because it was done on, I've got the Pure Pleasure.
Yes.
But he needs to do the other one as well. Harmony of Spheres.
It's going to be, I can't say too much, but it's going to be fantastic.
And I'm sorry, just to quickly tell people, I almost pulled the Ardley because he was one of these guys who tried to blend jazz with classical, with a more extended form. And I think he succeeded.
Absolutely.
I remember there used to be this amazing record program on the BBC when I was in my teens called Sounds Interesting, a critic called Derek Jewell. And he would just pick out some records that he thought were interesting, literally, and then talk about them in depth and then play them. And I was into jazz, but that was how I discovered that. It's always been one of my absolute favorite records, both of those. That's also how I discovered because I was not into rock until I got a bit older. But how I discovered Jethro Tull, because he played songs from the Wood and said, this is really different and interesting and you need to listen to this. And I did, and I loved it. And I'm a huge Tull fan. But that's so exciting that they're going to do the Ardley, because these are I mean, the original, they're basically Decca pressings, are great.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Should I show something?
I insist.
Oh my God, there's so much to show here. Very quickly, since I know you were doing Indian food earlier. You told me you were cooking Indian.
I cooked Indian food just before we got on our session.
If you don't know this, everyone, you've got to buy this.
Yes.
Raikuda. I'm a huge Raikuda fan. I have everything. One of my best sounding records is the Stones one that he plays on, what's it called? Let It Bleed.
Yes. Wow.
And it's like I've got an original Decca stereo, which I picked up for $5 in a little place in England years ago. It is like he's in the room. But this is fantastic, where it's a blend of his music and Indian, and done by the great
Kavi Alexander. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. I was actually, funny enough, I was actually at the transfer session of that very record, Meeting by the River, with Kavi Alexander. I picked him up in Santa Barbara. I drove him down to Camarillo to Kevin Gray's studio, which was at the time still at RTI, in a little cornered off section. And we had the 1-inch 2-track tapes on Tim DeParvincini modified CJ37 Studer. And I was at that transfer.
Wow.
I think this was 2002 or 3 or maybe 4 or something like that. Yeah, it's around. And then, of course, Kavi, giving his whole input and it was brilliant. I mean, it was spectacular.
Oh, I can imagine. It's a wonderful session, just incredible.
You're in. I think it was recorded in in one of the churches in Santa Barbara, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I can't remember. Could well have been.
and which is where Cosby was living.
Christ for King Chapel.
Yes, Christ for King Chapel in Santa Barbara. And I mean, it's in your room. Kavi, or excuse me, Kavi Raikooder. It's just a brilliant recording. Absolutely brilliant. A figure of 8 Bloomline setup. And that's it. And a CJ37 Studer. And no compression and no limiting. Amazing.
And then the music's incredible, which is not always the case with these audiophile, very audiophile niche things, but it is gorgeous music.
Very true.
I'm going to pick out a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Oh, so the Bruckners amongst you, check this out. This is the wonderful Vienna Philharmonic Quintet. These were members of the Vienna Phil, and they recorded extensively for Decca. And this is their recording of the string quintet, which is lovely. So if you've not had your fill of Bruckner, this is one to go for. A great way to pick up Decca's, which are gorgeous records, sounding records, is on their budget label, the Ace of Diamonds. And they cost a fraction of the originals, and they sound every bit as good.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm going to pick out just a. Oh God, I think it's so long.
Yeah. So much for your theory of let's just pick 10 records.
Yeah. So I have a huge pile. I was just going to go with one of the very, very best sounding records in my collection. And this is funny. This was given to me as a present literally 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when I was in Boston by one of the engineers. I didn't open it. I didn't listen to it until about 6 years ago. Now, this is one of my, and we're going to come back to some Decca Phase 4 here as a result, but the original soundtrack recording of the Bernard Herrmann score for Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. And this is the re-release on the Res Saraband. And of course, it was originally recorded. I'm pretty sure it was recorded to 35mm film, just like the, a lot of the Mercuries, etc.
Yes. Yeah.
And this thing
rocks.
It's rocks. You need to get this particular edition. But wow, it's just incredible. And awesome. I'm a huge Herrmann fan, and I've got so many stories about him. I wrote a thesis about him for my master's, etc. I think this is still available. He did all these records for Decca Phase.
Oh yes, that's that's on Harry Pearson's top 100 list.
Oh yeah. I mean, I bought these when they all came out. I have my original UK pressing of this. Wow. I think this is still available. This is the Org double 45.
ORG, yeah.
I can't believe it's still not sold out.
Yeah.
Do you have this, Danny?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I've got the ORG reissue. Yep. Unbelievable. Brilliant.
Now, this is very interesting. This is one he did.
Oh, yes. Ugh.
Now, the interesting thing about this one
and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this was actually recorded at Decca's sort of regular studios. It was not recorded in Kingsway Hall or anything like that, or any of these other places. And so the acoustic is much drier. For many years, I bought this when I was a teen. I wasn't so crazy about this. And it is a particular kind of sound, but I now love the immediacy of this. And the performances are sensational. You've got bits from Vertigo, North by Northwest, Psycho.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's sensational. And one of the very best sounding records I have in my collection is this one, which is past. Do you know this?
Never heard of Citizen Kane. Never. What is that?
This particular record. Do you know this? It's part of the RCA.
Wow.
Okay, so
look at that.
So RCA did this whole series of records of recording classic Hollywood film scores. They were all recorded in Kingsway Hall. Charles Gerhardt conducting, with Kenneth Wilkinson engineering, and that all of these are worth getting. Even though they're RCA pressings, if you go for the English pressings in particular, not an issue.
Wow.
This one, so quite apart from Citizen Kane, I mean, this has some really interesting, lesser-known stuff. It has Citizen Kane, but then it has this incredible piece from a score he did for On Dangerous Grounds, which has 8 horn players and percussion. It's a sort of chase sequence. You've got a bunch of his very exotic approach to orchestration, White Witch Doctor, Beneath the 12-Mile Reef, and then some of the best recorded piano sound I've ever heard, music from Hanover Square. And then on the Citizen Kane, they got the great Kirite Kanawa. If you remember in the film, there's the sequence where the Mrs. Kane, he's built a whole opera house for her, but her voice is too small, so she can't really sing it. For this, they did a real singer. So they got Kirite Kanawa to come in. And it's one of the best recordings of a soprano soloist I've ever heard in my life, until we got to the original Source Strauss 4 Last Songs, which was amazing. But all of these records are essential. And Danny, this is, you need
I gotta get that. Wow.
You've got to get this on, get a UK pressing if you can. But all of these are absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Have we got time to show a few more of you?
So King's Hall and Wilkinson, to those that are into the audiophile club, you will instantly recognize the Royal Ballet Gala, which was, of course, recorded at King's Hall and
Kingsway Hall.
Sorry, and with Wilkinson, and you will hear the subway passing through.
Yes.
What, about 7 miles away or 6 miles away or something like that, in the thunderous distance. So yeah, Kingsway Hall and Wilkinson.
I mean, that is still one of the best audiophile recordings ever. But it's interesting you mention that, because I specifically picked something for people who love that set but want to get something a little bit more.
Of course you did.
I very specifically picked it.
I love it.
Find it.
I love it.
So yeah, if you have that set, which is a wonderful way to get introduced to classical music, because it's all this very accessible ballet music, and ballet music is great for people getting into classical music.
Yeah,
this set.
Very joyful. It's very explorative. Yes.
Yeah. Oh. So Richard Bonning was conductor, married to Joan Sutherland, and he put out a whole series of records. He's trying to get me. Defeated by technology again. I could be looking at a mirror image of myself struggling with this technology.
I don't understand how any of this works. There we go.
And it's lesser known. So he did a whole series of ballet recordings, and I've got it up here. There's a box set and CD box set that came out of all of them. This is with the London Symphony Orchestra. I don't know. I should have researched this before I pulled it out.
Oh, it's fine.
It's beautifully recorded.
I bet. It has to be.
Decca's. I bought them as I was growing up. This one I got more recently, but it's a completely different selection of music. But it includes things like the Meditation from Thais, which is very famous. But there's a bunch of stuff you've never heard of. But it's so delightful, and the book has all these great photos of the dancing.
Love it.
This is great. So for people who are into that, thinking I would love to get something just like that Royal Ballet thing, which is still available from Acoustic Sounds, that's the one to get. And I'm just going to, since we're right here, I'm just going to mention very quickly.
I figured you'd have a couple of records to show.
Oh, God. Well, since we're on the subject of RCA living stereos, I'm going to be relentless. I keep saying this. Chad needs to reissue a few more titles that he has the rights to, that Classic Records did.
Yes.
And I've picked out 2.
Please.
He's got the metal parts. He could do it. I know he's got all this other stuff going on, but these 2 are no-brainers, and they're 2 of the very best in the whole series. First one. Do you have this, Danny?
Oh my God! Of course, Clair de Lune. Yes,
this is just exquisite sound.
Unbelievable.
It's fully the equal of the Royal Ballet, and
100%.
It's short pieces. This is something. Whenever I'm listening to new equipment, I immediately put this on.
Put that on. Yep, 100%. Yes,
always. And then the other one is this one. Whoops.
Oh, yes. Stravinsky.
No, this is the Elgar Enigma Variations.
Oh, Elgar, yes.
Haydn Variations.
Yes.
And again, one of the best recordings, best performances, very accessible. And, Chad,
must have.
You've got the parts. Just do it, please.
Must have.
Please.
Absolutely. Completely agree. Must have.
Along with a few other things, the Classic Records Mercuries, which need to be redone, non-digital. Yeah. So.
Love it.
Are we gonna pause there?
I think we're gonna pause here. Like you said, Mark, I think we could be talking for hours and hours at a time. Look, I think music is a great connector. I think music is a great cultural, communal communicator. And I think music brings us together. I forgot who said it first. It's one of those cliches again. But music really does bring us together.
It does.
Whether it's classical Indian music, whether it's classical Western music, whether it's jazz, whether it's pop, whether it's rock, music just brings us together. I mean, look, my parents came from the old communist bloc, Yugoslavia. When I recall when Billy Joel, actually Billy Joel's brother lives in Vienna, believe it or not. When Billy Joel did that Moscow concert, it's amazing stuff. I mean, think about it. Music really is the harbinger of a meeting of the minds. Absolutely. It really is.
It's funny you mentioned that. I have such a vivid memory. Do you remember when you were little, when Elton John went to Russia?
Yes, of course.
First one, and he did a concert with Ray Cooper. I remember listening to that live on the radio, lying on my bedroom floor. I think it has now come out on LP.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard to imagine. That was the first time anyone went to Soviet Union and performed.
Yeah.
And I listened to it live on the BBC. Oh my God. So privileged.
Crazy.
You're completely right. Yeah.
Crazy. It's truly, I think this generation has this incredible opportunity of discovering music that literally tore down walls. Literally. And, I think the more we expose that, the more we talk about it, the more stories are being told. I think the more people are going to wake up, so to speak, and realize just how much importance music has in our cultures, in our upbringing, et cetera, et cetera. So
I mean, one of the saddest sort of offshoots of the Ukraine war is that all these great Russian performers don't come. I mean, here in LA, very large Russian population, and the Kirov.
Sure. Yeah.
What was the Kirov, now the Mariinsky? They would come regularly, and I saw the opera. I took my daughter to the ballet. I heard Gergiev, who unfortunately is a Putin sympathizer, but I did hear the most amazing Rite of Spring with him conducting
on Phillips.
He's done several, but I heard him live.
Let me tell you
the one
something.
on Philips is amazing.
If you want Gergiev Rite of Spring, it's a Philips recording.
Yes, it's great.
It came out, I don't know when it came out.
Oh, I think in the
years
90s.
ago, something like that, 15
Yeah.
years ago. It is mind-boggling. After the first movement, when the drums and the percussion kick in, holy shit. It's literally, bam, Maxell commercial, circa 1982. It literally.
Well, imagine that live. Imagine that live. It was in the old Dorothy.
Where did you see
Pavilion.
him?
Sorry?
At the Pavilion.
Yeah, it was before Disney was open. And one of the raps on that hall was there was no bass. And let me tell you, in that performance, there was bass. Those double basses were like, they were
unbelievable.
It was amazing. I heard him conduct a number of times. I always amazed that anyone could actually follow his beat. In an interesting thing, it was my wife and I went to see the LA Opera doing the Tchaikovsky Queen of Spades.
Okay.
And he was conducting.
Yeah. Wow.
And we came out of that and we were thrilled. Domingo was singing in it.
Wow.
And we got up the next morning, and the next morning was September 11. And we woke up the next morning. Yeah. And that was happening. And it was surreal. We were on such a high from the night before. And then we went, and then you want to hear something really surreal? We went when the opera did its first performance after that. It was a production of Lohengrin. And it was the first, and and as with most theaters, they started with the national anthem before and this was about a month after everything.
Yeah.
And this production of Lohengrin was one of these modern ones. It was actually directed by Maximilian Schell, the famous actor.
You're kidding.
But it was modern, and this was what was weird. It was a modern dress production, and the chorus were all dressed as Nazi stormtroopers with see-through plastic coverings, and it was very odd to watch after 9/11.
Wow.
It was very strange. Yeah,
incredible.
But there we go. But yeah, Gergiev. But yeah, he's. But I never know how the orchestra can follow his beat. He's but he's very close to Putin, so he doesn't appear in the West anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Good old.
It's a little bit of a downer, but to finish on. I will pick one more record just to show.
Please.
Just to finish.
As a matter of fact, I actually had in my mind as you were talking, I was thinking, okay, how are we going to end on a high note? So you pick one, and I'm going to pick one out of memory.
Okay, so when you're listening to recordings of classical music, there are certain sort of benchmark things by which you judge a recording. One is, how well do they record vocals? How well do they record the orchestra, the strings? And I've got a whole bunch of string records, but I'm not going to show those. But one of the key ones and the hardest ones to record is the piano.
Yep.
Really, really hard to piano.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
And I'm going to show you, I'm going to pick what I think is a really superb recording of a piano. And there's no way in hell any of you are going to guess what this record is. It's hysterical. It's hysterical.
Oh my God. I love it. That's brilliant.
So I am a passionate lover of the art of noise. These are all my original UK pressings, which I bought as they came out.
Oh my gosh.
I have such vivid memories of buying these, and they sound incredible. So Anne Dudley was part of the Art of Noise. She was classically trained. And for people who don't know, the Art of Noise were basically the backing group for Frankie Goes to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And then they decided to do their own records, and they're, at the vanguard of sampling and all of that. I like you, I love electronic music and all, Stockhausen and all that stuff. But this was kind of bringing all of that into pop music, and it's just so cool. And even on this one, One of the tracks, which one is it? I can't never remember which one. It's Beatbox, which is the long one, ends with just a piano solo. And she plays a Bösendorfer, which I think is the best sounding piano there is. Forget your Yamahas and your Steinways.
Yep.
And she did this album a few years ago in which she basically uses her own. So she lives in an attic apartment in London, and they had to haul her Bösendorfer into the apartment on a crane, sort of through the windows and stuff. And it's a prepared piano. So it's all done by recording the piano. She treats it, she does stuff with it, and there's some electronics. But the actual piano sound on this is unbelievable. Now, the only problem is this vinyl, it's a little noisy, even after cleaning.
Yeah.
But you can also get it on CD, and it's just phenomenal piano sound. So you might have trouble tracking down the vinyl, but you can certainly find it on CD. But anyway, there we go.
Wow. Brilliant. I love it.
And what was your pick from memory?
My pick was shoot, what was it?
You better hurry up or I'll show another record to cover you while you think what it is.
It's not going to be that one. Hang on a second. It's a completely different genre. Hang on. Wait. Oh, completely different genre. Which, we have to get into. So I'm a sucker, absolute sucker for 50s and 60s early stereophonic
that's
demo test records.
Oh god, well, it's kind of like the easy listening stuff. It's just too much fun.
Stereo just came out. This is the left channel, this is the right channel. And so all these guys came out, conductors creating symphonic arrangements. And of course, this is one of the greats, Les Baxter.
Les Baxter, yes, absolutely.
Yes. The primitive and the passionate. I mean, my God.
Oh my God, that looks fantastic.
Mark, this is
that a reissue?
No, it's an original.
It's gorgeous.
Oh my God. It is absolutely seductive listening. It's just awesome. So first of all, Les Baxter, great American arranger, conductor in the 50s and 60s, like I said, in the early stereo era, the sort of kitsch sound of the 50s and 60s.
I love it. Yeah. But, and he's one of the greats. He's, it's him, Esquivel, all those guys. Yeah.
Esquivel, exactly. Yes, absolutely. This is a must-have in your collection. It's a $10 record at best. It's unbelievable. It's on reprise, and man, I tell you, this thing is just bombastic. So
I'm heading over to Discogs.
I love it.
That's great.
Mark,
that's a beautiful copy.
You've been absolutely fantastic.
Oh, likewise.
I knew we would have a common language.
We could go on forever.
4 hours.
Yeah,
we should do a live session. Come to think of it, everyone else is doing a live session. We should do a live session.
Okay.
That's the Mark and Danny show. You pick a day, probably Friday or Saturday, and a time, and we'll do a live session. I think that's what people need and want.
Okay. Am I allowed to dance? Can I dance?
Yes, of course you are. Well,
not the seven veils. I hasten to add, not the seven veils.
Love it, Mark. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolute pleasure. I'm kind of envious of you. You've worked your way through that large glass of wine.
Next time.
And you've got Indian food. Indian food awaiting you.
Yes. Indian. Wait a. It's what is it? 8 o'clock. It's 8 o'clock on the dot. Eastern time. Just in time for dinner. It's been an absolute pleasure, Mark. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And I look forward to many, many more. You're awesome.
You bet. Oh my God, could just work my way through the collection. And yours. And yours. I always love to see other people's records. So
love it. Be
Cheers.
well, my friend.
Yeah.
Ciao.